Got my clothes back on. That was close.
Yeah.
Nobody would have wanted to see that, Rob. Nobody would have wanted to see that.
Hey, folks, how's everybody doing out there? Can you hear me out there? And can you see me? I'm naked. Got to go get dressed. Shane. I didn't see you put that in there. Gonna have to control you, boy.
Well, I mean, I was naked and I had to get dressed, so
that was this morning, though.
Yeah, I was just letting everybody know.
All right. Well, I'm glad you guys all made it here. And again, this is like the third live session I've done. And so I am trying to be able to do these things with some kind of proficiency. But I do admit that that I stumble a little bit at times. And so be patient with me. And because I'm not sure in here. And so this is my first session where I'm trying to give some tips and tricks. And I see we've got several people in the group here. We've got Brooks, Martin, hey Brooks, and Kurt. And looks like they've been having a good conversation. We've got Steve Harneal from Harneal Media. He runs my website for me. Mark recommended him, and so I'm in the process of getting that built up. And thanks to Harneal. Steve, he's done in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, what I've been trying to do for 3 years. So it made a big difference, and I appreciate all of what his effort is.
I'd love to hear what he did.
Yeah, I'll let you go see my website.
Okay.
It's coming right along. And as you know, Kurt here is Shane's my guest tonight. You can see him in there. I was trying to figure out who I wanted to invite on for this first series, and Shane stepped up and said he'd be willing to do it with us. So we will turn into some epoxy stuff at the end of the show. But at the beginning of the show, what I said I wanted to do with these live sessions is to actually go over tips and tricks, things that come up often with me, or when I'm talking with others and providing coaching, or I hear them struggle with things. Just a couple quick tips and tricks without really getting into a whole lot of detail. And so I'm going to just cover a couple of those. And I'm not sure if I'll cover this whole list, but let me put a list of tips and tricks topics that have come up in the past. And I don't know if any of these will ring true with you, but I use a MacBook for my Vectric software. And a lot of people are under the impression that you can't really use it. And I just wanted to go over a couple things about using my MacBook. And so when you see this live session right now, it's all being done on my MacBook Pro. It is a souped out Pro. And so when you see me doing the Vectric manipulations and stuff as we demonstrate things for the live, realize that is on the MacBook. Then the other thing is a lot of times we're better off if we have the ability to do the shortcuts, but it's hard for many of us to remember all the shortcuts. So I wanted to give you a little tip and trick that I use for having the shortcuts readily available. And so I thought I'd share that. And then I'm trying to move my screen around. I have 3 screens so I can get lost, folks. So then the next thing I wanted to share was how I use guides to my advantage for precise moves on a regular basis. Now, some of this may be second, just you already know all this stuff, so I'll go through it fast. But if there's a question, I'll ask Shane to kind of watch the question box for me while I'm talking, and I'll watch when he's talking over in the comments. Go ahead and put that in there. And then how to use the nudge tool. We'll see if we want to go there. And my thoughts about when I use Z0 on the material surface and when I use it on the bed, and why I think about it that way. And then XY0 options and thoughts about that. And then I did have a request from one person in the community, and that was they wanted to know how you import an STL into vCarve Pro. So I'll try to give some time for that. And since that was a request, I'm going to move that up on the list. Yes, sir.
And then I'm going to want to know what STL is, so we can get into
Okay,
that.
here we go. It's stereo thermal I can't remember the actual term, stereo something model, but it basically is a 3D model that you use in 3D printers or any kind of 3D software. So I'll show that in a second here. So the use of MacBook for Vectric Software. What I wanted to tell you all is that you can do that fairly straightforward. I think it takes a strong Mac, not like an older Mac. And the way that you go about doing that is by using the parallel software. So what that means is I'm actually running two different operating systems on my MacBook. So the normal operating system, which is like a iOS kind of similar thing that Mac puts out, which is their proprietary operating system. And the other software is you buy a special add-on. I don't know, it was maybe $200, I can't remember, for what they call Parallels Desktop. What that allows me to do is actually run Windows on my MacBook. And so I can run them both at the same time. So when you see me flipping during this session over to Vectric, that's a Windows system, as you know, and I'm doing it right in my Mac with my iOS or my Mac software running on another screen. So I've got both softwares up, and for the most part, it is fairly clean and smooth, at least with my MacBook. So just so you know, it works. And if anybody would like to know more about how I'm doing it with parallels and stuff, I can spend some time with you through a Zoom call or something else, but I won't go into a lot of detail here because honestly, it's not relevant for most people.
Kurt just jumped in there too with he said 11.5 of vCarve Pro and Aspire use the GPU now more so. Does the Mac under Parallels / Windows render quickly? So I think that's what you were talking about getting into, right?
Yeah, well, I wasn't asking that, but that's the fair question. That's the kind of question it answers. So, Kurt, I've had no real noticeable slowdown in how the software is rendering when I'm doing my 3D processing. So nothing noticeable from when I was using my Windows machine. And so that was one of my concerns, but it hasn't created a problem yet. And I've been doing this now for over a year. I got my Mac machine in January of 2023, and the reason I did it was because of my YouTube video processing. The Windows machine, I just couldn't get it to be as smooth, and everybody said, "Go to Mac, young boy, go to Mac and try that out." And so I did, and it's actually worked out well for me because it coordinates with my iPhone and others. But that's just me. It works for me. Now, other people will swear by their Windows machines. I don't really have an affinity for either one, other than I now have kind of become a Mac boy, only because it interfaces with my iPhone and my iPad and everything else, my Apple TV. So that's the only real win. So the next one I wanted to talk about, that's a tip that you may or may not be using, is if you go to the Vectric software, and I'm going to go over to that screen right now. Let me present that screen. All right. So now what I have up is the Vectric vCarve Pro. And as you can see, there is a help button right up here at the top. And if you click on that, you can at all times go to keyboard shortcuts. But I actually find that kind of irritating. Don't ask me, it's just a personal thing. If I have to go up there to get my shortcut all the time for shortcuts I don't have memorized. And this is really long. And so one way to manipulate through this fast, of course, is if you hit the Control F. I don't know what it is on Windows, if it's Control F or Shift F, and you get this find bar. And so, for example, if I wanted to know the shortcuts associated with mirroring, because I see them do that all the time. This is a shortcut. If you hit H, it'll mirror it horizontally, but if you hit Control H, it'll create the mirror copy horizontally, et cetera, et cetera. So all these shortcuts are in here. Now, you can easily do that, and then what I do is instead of having that up, having to hit help all the time, I actually kind of minimize the window, and then whenever I want it, all I have to do is call it back up. So that's one way to do it. The other way I do it is I keep open a PDF version of it, and I just go through and use the PDF version. So I just keep that off to the side. I have the ability to have multiple screens. So you saw me drag it in from one of my other screens. And so what I normally do is keep that up on one of my couple screens that I have. So I don't know if that'll help anybody, but I find it very useful. And that was tip number 2 that I had on my list here, was ready shortcut reference. So not sure if anybody else will find that a useful tool, but I thought it was. So now let's go to how to use guides to your advantage for precise moves. Because I see people at times when I'm talking with them struggle about how to get their designs in a exact location for what they want. So what I'm doing right now is I'm opening up vCarve Pro again, and I just opened a file that is a cribbage board. In fact, this is one that I did for Laguna when I was doing those videos for Laguna. If you remember me back a couple of years ago when I was doing that. And all I did was open up this file, and you can see that this is an SVG that opened up and on top of a Vectric CRV file. And I'm not going to change any of the settings over here because everything came in the way it needed to. And we can talk about that some other time. But let's do a couple things right now quickly. And the first one is I'm going to take and I'm going to group this, and I can either select it all like that, and then I can hit G for group, or if I want, I can use the group button over here. Now there are a gazillion holes here, so it takes a little bit longer. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit the F9 key, if I remember it right. Let's see here. And that centers the model.
Jeez.
Okay, so that's really fast, and that's kind of cool to remember. That's one of those shortcuts that's really good. So G for group, and then F9 to center the model. Those are a couple shortcut keys. Now I wanted to get into, and I'm going to ungroup now. So to ungroup, it's U for ungroup, or if you want, you can come over here and it's thinking right now. It's ungrouping all those holes. So I wanted to make sure they ungrouped back to the layers. So it ungrouped already. And let me put a couple different colors on these layers now, because I like to do that. So my holes, let me make those blue. And you can see all my holes. And then my grid, I'm going to leave black. And my text, I'm going to make that, let's say, orange or something. Hopefully you guys can all see that. I'm not sure about the colorblind test, which colors are hard to see. So remember what I said I wanted to talk about was precise movements using the guidelines. So for example, let's say that I wanted to move this cribbage board over just 1/4 of an inch or 1/16 of an inch. There's 2 ways I can do that. One is, and this is a really easy one, of course, is I can go over to the move tool over there, and I can go ahead and move it relative to where it is, and I can move it, say, 1/4 inch over. And the other one is, let's say I want to go up at the same time. So I can go 0.25 inches, put a typo in there, up. So now I know specifically it's going to go a 1/4 inch to the right, and it's going to go a 1/4 inch up. Now, if I wanted it to go down and to the left, I would use negative numbers, and I hit apply, and everything moved. Well, that's pretty obvious. If you didn't know that, hopefully this gave you that idea. I'm going to hit Control Z to reverse that. Now, I wanted to talk about guides. So a guide is a feature where you bring out a vertical line or a horizontal line, and you can do certain things from there. So let's take the example of I want to move this thing a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch. And so I'm going to put guides right on the edge. So making sure that I have snapping on so the guide is right on the edge. And here's the cool thing about guides is if I wanted to move this a 1/4 inch, and this is a real simple version, but you'll get the concept, I think, is I can come over to the guide and I can right-click the guide. And when I right-click the guide, you can see it has guide properties. And I got two things I can do with these guides. I can either go to the absolute position that I want the guide, and this one says it's 2.1 inches right now. Or this is where I like to move things, is I can go relative to this guide which way I want to go. So if I said I wanted to go over, let's just use something radical. Let's say I want the guide to be minus 1 inch to the left, or 1 inch to the left. So it would be -1 x, -1 from this guide right here, because this is the one I selected. And now if I hit create new guide, you see I have this extra guide over here. So now if I want to move this whole model, instead of using the move tool, with these multiple monitors, sometimes my cursor disappears as I go flying through things. Now I can just take it because I've got it on the snap, and it snaps right to that guide.
What's a snap? Is that button up on the top there?
Yeah, the snapping tool is right here, and since
Okay.
I've got it turned on, toggle smart snapping on and off. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep, I
So
see.
that allows me to snap to various geometry.
I've never even seen those buttons on the top of the page before, so that's very interesting.
Yeah, these are really helpful buttons. So this button here is snapping on and off, and this is another snapping, and one is smart snapping, and one just snaps to geometry. Okay?
So this whole time I've been, if everyone wants to have a laugh, how retarded I am, I pulled my guides in to exactly what I need, like usually 3/4 of an inch or 1.5 inches, whatever it is, and I set those in place, and then I highlight my whole piece, click it, and I move and zoom, and I set it on the lines. I had no idea you could do it like that.
Yeah, that's exactly how I can do it. Nor the other way that you could do it is just setting the guide at that number. And the way you would set a guide at a specific number, if I right-click on that guide, see the absolute position. If I wanted that right at 3, I hit that, and then I hit create new guide, and now it's right at 3 inches.
Well, that's going to save me some time. Thank you.
That's what the goal is. Now this here is pan 2D view with the mouse. So now instead of using your scroll bar, you just go ahead and use this, and you can pan, and now I turned it off, and now you see the mouse just does its normal thing. This one here is zoom 2D view to mouse drawn box. So right now you see I clicked on it and it didn't do anything. But if I wanted to zoom in just to this area right here, I put a box there and I hit zoom, and it goes right there. You see that? So this box is handy. this box up here is zoom active view to drawing limits. So if I go and do that, I click on that, you see it made sure that I had everything that was in the drawing available to see. And then this one here, zoom active view to selected objects. So the other one, this one was a box, right? And this one was selected objects. And the best thing about this one is, well, I'll show you how it does. So let's say I want to look at this hole. I just, right under the 55, not sure how clear you can see it on the screen. If I hit this box, because I selected it, and I go there, see how it went right to the box, the hole?
Yep.
Now I'll go back to the limits. Now the next cool thing, this is where this tool becomes a lifesaver when you get something like this. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to hit N for nodes or select the node button. So you can hit N or select that. I'm going to put this right here. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut this vector right here. And then I'm going to cut this vector again. Right here.
Careful, that's going to cut it all the way out, right?
Yeah. It went out of the node. It should have been.
Yeah, just don't.
There we go. Now I'm going to cut this vector right here. All right. And so that's probably not what I wanted to do with this demo. Let me get out of there. What I want to do is make an open vector real quick.
Oh, you're going to show how you can zoom in on if there's an open vector.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's
so let me move this over. I got to get out of node mode. Being in node mode is messing me up.
Well, you saying you're all messed up, I mean, that pretty much just looked like me working on my vectors. So
anyway, I'm coming over here. I'm dragging over here, and I'm going to make this one an open vector, right? So what I want to do is I want to cut right here, node, N, cut right here, cut the vector. Now we know I've got an open vector there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to go in here and I want to go like this, and this is if you're doing like if you're doing a vCarve Pro and you get that message that says you've got an open vector when you're doing vectors.
I get them all the time.
Yeah, you get them all the time, and you can find that. So this is going to, if I go over here and I say right click, didn't want to do that. Hit right click and then find selection, select all open vectors, right? Now, sometimes that vector, I'm blowing this up. Sometimes that vector is so darn small, you can't see it, right? So I'm going to hit select open vector again because I had some other ones over here. Select all open vectors, and I'm going to get rid of these right here because I know they're open on purpose. So sometimes that vector is so small, or the break, you see, I just had one node. You can't see why that would be open if you're looking at it. So if you have that, and let's say you've got like 5 or 6 of them in a vCarve Pro path that you got this thing on, and you go, I can't find it. Then you come up to this. After you hit select all open vectors, it's going to find all of them. In fact, it's going to find this one and this one, right? So because I highlighted those, I go over here and I select this, and it will zoom into the open vector normally. I'm throwing it off right now. I'm going to have to get a better example, but I'm throwing it off because I've got these open vectors too. So the point is,
can you only select just the middle of that 0 right now and then go use that third eyeglass button?
Yeah.
Yeah, click that and then go click that third eyeglass button.
And I'll click the one. I'll click both of them. So now I go in here and I hit that zoom act, see how it goes in there.
Yeah,
it tells me those vectors are open.
So now, where do you see that circle's open? Let me see.
Well, you'd have to, because it went to where there was an open vector, you'd now have to hit the node tool, and you're going to get an idea because you'll have this off green button here.
The other thing, Rob, go over to your edit objects, right next to the scissors, to the right of the scissors is the check mark.
Yeah, here?
No, to the right. Yeah, one more to the right. Yeah, click that. And then hit vCarve mode. Just check that box. No, first got to check that. Yeah, check that box.
Yep.
And then hit search all. And then now go. Why didn't it do it? What's it saying there? Do you have any?
Well, it says we have 0 link spans, overlaps, and intersections, but because we're not actually calculating the toolpath, it won't show us the open vectors. Oh,
okay.
Because they'd have to be in there.
Because that's where I have to go in and fix all my open vectors. I use that tool, and it kind of shows me like little marks where the things are open at, and then I zoom in on those marks and attach them, or whatever I got to do there.
Yeah, exactly. And so the point that I'm trying to make is, if you get stuck where that vector, sometimes that vector is, let me do a line here. Sometimes that vector is like that big in the middle of a whole bunch of text and everything else, and you can't find it. All you have to do is go ahead and zoom in on that vector if it's been selected as open, and it will blow it up for you so you can see it. That's what that hourglass is. All right, and the rest of these have to do with the toolpaths, so I'm not going to go into those right now. And this one has to do with the model visibility when you're working with a 3D model. All right. So let me go back to my list here. Where are we on time? I want to be respectful of people's time.
We got 32 more minutes.
All right, but I want to give some time for you too. So I'll talk about the nudge tool in a future tips and tricks. And then Z0 options and thoughts about why I do those, and XY0 options and thoughts about when I use left, right, center, or whatever. I'll go through that philosophy in a future session. And then
they might not even have any questions for me at all. So I'm sure you'll be going through all the stuff you wanted to go through.
No, I want to give you a chance because I wanted you to share some recent projects and then give them a chance to ask a question. That's why I have guests. All right. So the last one that I wanted to do was, because it was a request, I'm going to create a new file. I don't want to save anything here. And I'm going to make this one 14 by 14 by 1.5 inches. I'm going to go in the center, and the material settings, I'm just going to leave where they are. I'm going to, because I'm going to be working with the 3D model.
Are we supposed to be seeing your screen or no?
Oh, thank you.
That's okay. I wasn't sure if, all these guys, I'm sure, actually know what you're saying.
No, because I don't have the screen up there. Okay, so I put up a new project. I'm making it 14 by 14. What you want to do is keep it as close as possible to where you think you're going to make it. So let me make this 10 by 10. And 10 by 10. And I'm going to make the thickness 1 inch thick. I'm going to go off the material surface because I'm doing a 3D carve. And that's one of the times that I always go off the surface because I want it to stay accurate as I go down through. I'm going to go in the center for right now. And then I'm going to go to very high, which is a little slower. And there's 2 other secret modes if you're not familiar with those. I'm going to leave the material settings here at maple for now. And then I'll show you how you can change that later. And so now I've got my project set up. And the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to, because I'm going to be working with a 3D model, I'm going to split the screen. And that gives me my 3D side on my right and my 2D side on my left. And then I'm going to go to my modeling tab. And in my modeling tab, this is vCarve Pro, so you have a lot more options in Aspire. you see here where it says import a component or 3D model. So this is getting into the STL part that you were talking about, Shane.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple 3D models that I've used in the past, one that I developed and the other one other ones where I have bought them or whatever. And so I'm going to go to one that I've used a lot, but it was a design and make model, but I changed it into a 3D model. And that is this eagle with open wingspan. If you can see that, see it says STL file. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to hit open. So now what you see is, and let me switch to a full screen there so you can see. So you see this eagle has been imported. And the first thing you want to do, or it's getting ready to get imported, is make sure it's sitting on your wood the way you want it. So this is the wood right here. And you have these things that if you want to fine tune your model, you can fine tune. And we're not there at this point, and we're probably not going to have to get there. I was trying to use a fairly straightforward model. So
straightforward, Rob. But honestly, at this point, you don't even have to speak English anymore. I'm completely lost.
I'm sorry. Did you?
No. These guys I know what you're talking about.
No, not everybody.
3D.
So I import this 3D model, and you saw how I did that. I hit that bird up there, and when it comes in, it's going to come in a certain way. And this up here allows you, see how that model's flipping around when I do this? It's different views of how that model was created. And so this is the one, because it looks like it'll sit flat on the wood, that we're going to probably want this top view. So we're going to leave that where it is. And then we want to talk about how big the model we want it to be. So remember I said it was 10 by 10. If we wanted to change it, we could change it right here. So if I wanted to make that bigger, I could make this 10. And if I leave the scale, everything scaling, see lock XYZ, it will make everything change. And see how it made it a little thicker? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take it down to 9 so it fits barely in that wood that I made. So now you see that the thickness of the model went from 1 point something down to 0.90 inches. That's how thick it is. This is the X direction. This is the 9. Now we're still out here in space. So the next thing we want to do is center the model. See how that brought it right to the center?
Yep.
After that, we want to go to position and import the model. So we're going to go to position and import the model. And what you're looking at is, if you look up in this area where the bright blue is, that means it's sticking above the wood. So there's no way it can carve. So what you want to do is you want to be able to move that model in a way that it's going to carve. And if we turn this view around, this is the modeling plane right now. So this is below the modeling plane and this is above the modeling plane. So if I want this all to show, I need to take, see this modeling plane right here? I need to take and move it. And you can move it by moving the eagle up and down. All right. And so the depth below the top. So it's showing me that everything's going to go below the modeling plane. I don't have two sides, so I'm not going to create both sides. I'm going to discard the data below the 0 plane here. And then I'm going to import the model. So now that I've imported it, you can see that's what the model looks like in the 3D view. If I split the screen, here's the STL or 2D version of that model that I made. And here's the 3D version of that model. Now, I've done this many times with eagles and flags. This is the eagle I use on my flags. So now once we have this model, to make it carve, the first thing I want to do is select the 2D version, and I'm going to come up here to this little arrow that says create vectors around the boundary. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to come down and click on the 2D model. And now what you can see, if you look really close, is there's a vector around it. You see that?
Yep.
Now I've got it set up so I can set up the toolpaths to carve. I've got the STL model. I brought it into the project in vCarve, and I can set up my toolpaths. So the first toolpath I want to set up with any of these models is a roughing toolpath. So I'm setting that roughing toolpath up. It tells me my material is 1.0 inches thick. I'm centering in the middle. If I wanted to, I could center down here. It really doesn't matter, however you like to do it. Let's put it down there because that's where most people do it. And then I'm going to go material surface. I don't want to change that. And this is the other key one, is cap above the model right now is 0 inches. Gap below the model is 0.09 inches. So it's really close. The key is you really want a little bit, for allowance of bits and how they work, a little bit above the eagle. Or at least I do. So I'm going to put like 0.00. I like 0.02 usually, which is less than a millimeter. That's good enough. Now I could either do it that way, or I could have come up here and just typed it in. And now that tells me that the gap above the model is 0.2. I didn't mean it to go all the way over there. But let me go back to the material setup again so that it doesn't click that fast. So I've got 0.02 inches above the model, which means everything will carve and I won't have any flat spots on the top. And I've got 0.9272 here. I'm in good shape. I'm going to hit OK. You could go through and mess with these if you want to. You usually don't have to. And now I've got my model set. So I'm going to go to my roughing plane. I usually like, on this model, I know that a 1/4 inch tapered ball nose will work really well. So that's what this bit is. It's from Amana, 1/4 inch tapered ball nose. I'm going to hit selected vectors as the boundary. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come over here and select this vector that I made. I'm going to got a boundary offset of 0.25 inches so the bit can actually go past the model and result in a better carve. I got a machine allowance of 0.04, which is what I usually like to use. And I like to do the 3D raster. So I'm going to assume my grain is going this way, which is how I normally line up my CNC, going 90 degrees. So I'll pick 90 degrees. If you picked a Z level, then it would just go over it level by level. But I'm going to go with the raster at 90 degrees. I like that. And I'm not going to use my layers at this time. And I'm going to hit calculate. And that will give me my first rough pass. Now, you always set up a rough pass if you're going to go deep into the model. Remember, this model is almost an inch deep. And so I want to use that because if you go to your finish pass, it goes straight down in. If you go to your rough pass, the bit only uses this, excuse me, the bit only uses the amount you put in for each step. So, for example, if I open this up and I go to this bit, you can see that the pass depth on this bit, and it should have been 0.25, not 0.6. I should have checked that. Is 0.25 inches. It'll go 0.25 inches at a time. Hit OK. And then I go calculate. So it won't take a chance on breaking the bit. And then I may need a smaller bit to get into the details. So what I would do is I'll come over and I'll do a finishing pass or a finishing tool path. And I've got a 0.125 tapered ball nose for that. I'm not going to reselect it or set anything up. Go through the same thing, raster 90 degrees, hit calculate, and now I have my toolpath that I want for this STL model that I imported. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to preview those toolpaths. So I'm going to preview the first one, which is the roughing pass. And I'm going to blow that up so you can see it better. So you can see that that 1/4 inch ball nose is doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I was going to say that looks like it's both. That's great. So that's just the roughing pass.
That's just the roughing pass.
Oh,
all right. And
both selected. Okay.
So all right. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the finishing pass, and I'm going to preview that.
I think you might have had them both selected. Can you? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I saw it wrong. But
well, let me reset it.
Yeah, because if that first one's the roughing pass, I mean, I've never done any of this anyway. I doubt I'll ever will. But I'll just skip the 1/8 inch. So you don't have to uncheck one of those boxes?
Well, I do. Right now, it's... There we go. All right, so let me do the 3D roughing pass. That's the roughing pass. And you notice how the blue lines cover all the way? So that tells you that there's not going to be a flat spot on the top.
Okay. Okay, so they were selected together before?
I think I might have accidentally selected the finish instead of the roughing pass.
That makes sense. Wow. Well, I don't know. That's still super detailed. Maybe you didn't.
No. You remember how fast it went and it didn't do a bunch of passes? That's why I know I selected the wrong one.
Oh, okay.
And now I could speed that up if I wanted to by changing the view of the toolpath so that the simulation quality wasn't as high. By coming up here and preview simulation quality, I have it very high. I'll put down there. Oh, I shouldn't have done that because it knocked it off. Do it one time, but it'll be faster. See how much faster it is?
Yep.
It's just not as clean when you get done of what you're seeing. All right, so now we're going to do the 3D finishing pass, which is an 1/8 inch ball nose. And that's all one pass. That's why I knew the other one was. So you see how much detail is in there?
Oh, yeah.
So now all you have to do, if we go back to the 2D view, if we want that cut out like I do with my flags, I go to a profile toolpath. And I'm going to go to Z. And actually what I would normally do is I would go down and measure how deep that gully was. But I'm just going to do Z to make it easier. And I'm going to select a 1/8 inch end mill. And I'm going to calculate that on the outside of the vector. I'm not going to do any of this stuff. Of course, I would take more time to set it up, but we've got time I want to give people. And now that's how I would cut it out. I will go and preview that. And now I have my eagle with some sanding that I can put on my flags. So I'm looking at the questions. Are there any questions? I don't see any questions. I see a tip by Brooks Martin about what he likes to do. And I see one by Michael Bernasconi that says he likes to use a eighth-inch tapered ball nose for most of his finish, and that's what I normally do is an eighth inch. That usually gives you plenty enough detail.
Michael Bernasconi, that name sounds so familiar.
Yeah, he's really sharp on 3D carves and stuff.
Oh, not a Swiss hockey player then?
No, he's not a Swiss hockey player.
Okay.
All right. So, in any event, that's how we go through and set that up, which was the request. The request was, can you show how to walk through an STL model and set that up? All right. So I feel good. I at least hit one person's request and got that done. So we've got technically about 15 minutes, give or take another 15, because I don't want to go much past it. Shane, share with us some of the projects you might be working on that are of interest, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers.
Well, I'm working on this one for a customer. His Instagram is Smokey G's. He's a barbecue guy. The most difficult vectors I've ever had to manipulate, and it came from Jorge too. So it's just the overlapping, because what I have is, you know how a lot of times Jorge will trace the cartoon with black lines, even if they're thin black lines, which matches the outline of the whole deal. This one has 3 different colors that are the actual outline colors. So getting that overlapped and in the proper order, I can't really, in 15 minutes, there's no way I could go into everything I'm dealing with. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do black in 2 separate pours. There's just no way there's no way to properly get this perfect in just by doing color by color, just because of the way these things line up. So I'm going to actually do black in 2 separate pours. So this will be the first time that I've ever mixed black, and I'm actually going to weigh the powder and count the drops of liquid that I put into the exact amount of ounces to do it. And then even though I won't need that much epoxy for the second pour because the hat is smaller than the suit that he's wearing, I'm going to mix up the exact same amount, use the exact same amount of powder by weight, exact same amount of drops, and mix that up. So when I pour these 2, it's going to be, okay to pass my eye test. So I know I make a lot of people wait, but this poor guy, I mean, fuck. I've already done the initial cut in the clear pour and part of the other logo, and I'm just stuck right now just manipulating vectors. I spend about 15 or 20 minutes a day on it. And hold on one second. Yeah, so for the Smokey G one, I'm spending about 15, 20 minutes a day on it. And I thought I'd have been done like a week ago with this. And it just, every time I'm finding one more little node that's out. And when I do that, and then I'm cutting this, it's not going to match up. So it's just been a nightmare. The other thing I'm working on is a really simple thing. I can grab it if you want me to.
Sure, go ahead, grab it if you got it. So one of the things that I've seen over there in the comments section is people talking about what bits they normally use. Oh, he's back.
Yeah, so it's just a plaque for Nancy just painted the side silver, so there's still silver on the top. So now I'll go back out. I'll sand the top of this. It's going to be a much nicer color when this is all finished. It's still just rough sanded. I'll put my logo on the back and put some, something he can hang it with. And, that's the most recent project I'm on right now.
So quick question, Shane, because this comes up a lot. When you get done with that, are you going to go all the way to polishing, or are you just going to sand it up to a certain finish?
So I'm going to sand this to 320, and then I'm going to flood coat it.
Flood coat.
It's a wall hanging, so I don't have to worry about anybody trying to cut on or anything like that. Otherwise, if it was a cutting board and I was trying to get that logo finished, I would, sand to like 280, then seal the wood with a a sanding sealer and then start sanding a 320, 400, all the way up to 1,000, and then go wet sand on the actual epoxy logo to about 4,000, and then to the 3M 3-stage compound deal that we use. Remember that Perfected or something?
Right.
Yeah.
3M Perfected system.
Yeah. If I'm not using like a flood coat, I have to go through that. I say this every time we talk, but I wish I'd have never done a cutting board ever. I wish I'd have just done wall signs, because it is just so much easier. Just a flood coat and be done. You don't have to. I mean, you could sand a 120 and flood coat, and it's perfect. I don't even know why I'm going to go up to 280 or 320.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would normally, if I'm going to do a flood coat, I won't go over 220, 180 or 220, right, because you just it's actually a little bit better grip for the epoxy, yep, and it won't make a difference in the end. You won't see whether you went to 180 or 300.
Yeah. So, I have a question for actually everyone that's in the comment section and logged in right now. Has anyone ever come across a finish, like a wood finish, or what are those ones? That green can. It's a very popular finish. I can go look in there. But anyway.
Rubio Monocoat.
Yeah, Rubio. Are there does anyone ever come across any finishes that just kind of rub on, but they fill scratch lines, or no?
I haven't. I know that Blacktail Studios and others use Rubio Monocoat, but then they finish up.
I saw Rubio.
Yeah, Rubio. Just what Jim said. Jim's been doing quite a bit with epoxy stuff that you'd be interested in, Shane. I'm going to have him as a guest when his house is not so destroyed. He was going to come on, and but he's got stuff going on with his house that he's remodeling. So in the next few weeks, we're hoping to get Jim on with some experimental epoxy stuff that he's doing that is really, really quite cool.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I know you'll like it.
Jim on just pretty much YouTube and Facebook, or does he have an Instagram?
No, he doesn't do really any of those very much. So I have a special connection with him in that I I message him all the time. Hey, okay, Jim, if there's a Facebook or something else that you post stuff on, put that in the chat so Shane can see it and others here, because you do some really cool stuff, man.
I want to see it.
But I last we talked, Jim, I didn't get the impression you do a lot of posting on social media.
I'll tell you one other thing I'm doing real quick, Rob, is and I've been doing this for a while, but I haven't ever completed one yet because I'm just catching all the errors, and so there's not enough for me to really talk about and explain this to people. But I'm doing I'm pouring like in one of the forms, like let's just say it's a 12 by 18, whatever it is, and I'm going like in layers, and I'm putting in like a background in epoxy, like green, a lot of greens and browns and stuff like that for the hills. And then I'm pouring more clear over it. And then I'm cutting into that and trying to put like another level on it, and then pouring more clear over that. And I've only gotten to 3 stages where I keep finding out like, oh shit, I should have done that or should have done this type of thing. So I think it's going to be really cool if I ever like get down the whole system of, getting 3 or 4 layers in a 1-inch thick epoxy piece, like a solid epoxy piece, about 1 inch thick with 3, 4, 5 different layers of colors in it, that when you look at it straight on, would be, oh boy, cops are pulling up. We look at it straight on, it would be pretty neat. So I don't know if I'll ever get that done or be able to talk about it, but I wanted to tell you about that. And if maybe that's something that you mentioned, Jim does a lot of crazy epoxy stuff. Maybe that's something he's working on, so I can learn something from him.
Yeah, I don't want to give away his thing, but it has to do with layers and clear epoxy. So not quite the same, but maybe in the same vein that you're talking about.
Oh, good. I'd love to watch it. So, Jim, let me make you an Instagram account. You don't have to do anything except log in. We'll make your password super easy, like Matthews 10. You log in, you just post a picture once in a while on there. You don't have to believe me, trust me. You don't have to engage with anybody, and people will still be all over your shit. So let's get you on Instagram so I can see it too.
So now Mark said, he's got an Instagram account, but Mark said he can't post the link in here because YouTube won't let him. So Jim, if you will send me, because I don't think I even have your Instagram account. If you send me your Instagram account via a text message, then I'll put it in the comment section, or not the comment section, but in the video description when I post this. All right, because that'd be cool, because you are doing some cool stuff. And it's the same thing with Brooks. Brooks, do you have an Instagram account or something we could go look at? Because Brooks does really cool stuff, and so does Mike Bernasconi.
Brooks,
and Mike's on his face is a lot on the Make and on Mark Lindsay's Facebook group, but he also has his own website. So I'll put some links in there to those things that people send them to me. I've got Mike's information. I'll put a link to his website in there for you to go look at. And it's not epoxy stuff. It's 3D carving stuff that is really quite slick.
Nice.
I'm hoping to have Mike's going to come on as a guest in a few weeks. He's got things he's doing right now, but we're going to get together in a few weeks and he'll be a guest.
Oh, I like this. I saw what Brooks just said. Okay, so Jim, just type in your Instagram name right here. Tell me what it is.
But anyway, so anybody have questions for Shane then? We got about 15 minutes if I stay on schedule here, which I said an hour, give or take 15 minutes. So let's see some questions in the chat.
I mean, these guys will probably be struck down with objections from my lawyer. Ask and answered, ask and answered. They're probably tired of me by now. That's why I was excited to do this with you, to hear about some, different stuff, some 3D carving and that kind of stuff. And actually, I learned some things that I'm going to actually try to do, just even if it saves me 10 seconds, just to try to do that.
Yeah, those shortcut keys are really beneficial, along with the use of being able to make accurate moves with the nudge and other things. What do you do with the leftover epoxy? Madeira 3212 says.
When he says leftover, he's not talking about, you mean like if I pour a certain amount for a project and then there's still some in the cup?
Yeah.
So one thing I do if I'm not measuring, like if I'm not so now I kind of have it down to where it's just kind of math, where I kind of know how many ounces I needed based on the void. So I'm always really close to where there's just a remnants in the cup and then I'm good. So there's not really much left over. However, if I am in a hurry and I'm not measuring anything and I'm just going to go, okay, I'm going to put 4 ounces in here and do it. I pour all that extra into it's a 48 ounce mixing cup. Basically, it's a graduated mixing cup, pretty thick. And so that might not be red. That night might have some red or some blue. And then the next night I might put pink and orange. Like I just do that over the course of a week or two. And then I've got these blocks that are like just layered. And I figured someday I'll grab a lathe and then be able to do something on that. But I've never done anything with any of them yet. But I have several chunks made with different colors poured in there. That's all I do with it.
Yeah. So I do that. And then the other thing that I do is I have a couple coaster molds. So I put them in coasters, and then I keep telling myself I'll give the coasters away to people. But right now they're just building up in my storage area. So coasters are easy because they don't take a whole lot. And if you have a couple different colors, you can pour them in. So.
Yeah, I saw Kurt said something about a rose, a flower. That's all going to die inside the epoxy eventually. But sometimes it can take a real long time, but eventually it's going to wither away. And
well, what you have to do with that is you have to dry them using silicone.
Right.
So you have to dry and press. You have to turn them into dried flowers, so that otherwise they just do what Shane is saying, is they biodegrade. But if you turn them into dried flowers, they'll last. Do you see the question there, Shane? Have you ever used oddball materials in your epoxy boards? And he went on to say, for instance, it's Mark, says, for instance, I've used walnut shavings in epoxy as a background material.
That's cool. No, I've not done that. I put the specific items in like the big river tables and stuff that I've done, like pine cones or widowmakers or, teeth or stuff like that. Ammunition, all those kind of things, but never just like what he's saying. That's a really good idea.
And this one here was the one you already answered. Have you ever done a live flower? And I run an epoxy special interest group for the San Diego Fine Woodworkers. And this has been one of the topics of interest, Kurt. And if you want, I can share a few videos that talk about how you go about approaching flowers and stuff, because we have a couple horticulturists and some expertise in that area that really want to know about that. So I can make a playlist on my YouTube channel that people can go to and see that. If you're interested, drop me a note. If you use a lot of shortcuts, you might want to check out a Stream Deck. Yeah, Mike, I've heard about the Stream Decks. I've looked into them, but I just haven't made that investment yet because I haven't felt that it was going to be worth the investment, but it might be. But that's good input.
I found, I did find Jim.
Good.
Let's see.
So here's one where Brooks says, interesting concept. Ben's Works does stuff like that on his YouTube channel. Are you talking about the flowers, Jim? And Jim says it is fun to use tinted epoxy in place of wood glue, which gives you a color accent. That's one of the cool things Jim was doing. He's making some bowls with layers of epoxy and stuff. He picked up the idea from a guy named Corbin at Corbin's Tree Shop, or Corbin Dunn's YouTube channel. And then he built off of that. He took one idea and he went off of that. And some of the stuff he's done, I can't wait till he can share that with us in the live stream.
Okay, I have a question for Jim Matthews now.
Okay.
Have you ever you've seen this one before, Rob, with the cat?
Yeah, he does a lot of Far Side type stuff.
Yeah, so have you ever seen that one finished in the frame that he made on his, because it looks like this is from about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen so you've seen the finished one, on Facebook?
No, he sent me a picture.
Oh, send me that.
Text.
I'd love to see it. Well, I'll put
I'll have to find it.
Here, hold on. I'm gonna put my number in the.
They might
whoever just. Oh fuck! It won't let you put your phone number.
No.
Okay.
You have to spell it out. I will, Kurt, I'm taking a note about putting that playlist together. All right, okay, I'll do that.
My phone number for Jim here. Jim, send me a text.
I'll send Jim your phone number.
Okay, or I could just say it out loud. Get a pen. In 3, 2, 1, 562 665 8777.
And Brooks basically said all sorts of weird things in epoxy on Ben's channel. Yes, it will, Ellen. I've done it on a small scale. So he was answering an earlier question. And let's see. And Brooks was talking about Mark's calico tray was awesome. So any other questions? Well, I just want to close with saying thank you to everybody. And I appreciate you showing up for this live. The goal is the structure will be to cover some kind of tip or trick that makes my life easier when working with Vectric software or Lightburn or other things. I'm kind of shooting in the wind when I'm doing that because people come in with different skill levels, and I'm not quite sure what they're going to find boring and what they're going to find interesting. So I will try to keep it at things that I use on a regular basis that when I talk to others, they say, hey, I never thought about doing it that way. So I'll try to keep it to those kind of things. And then the other thing is I'm going to put in the community section as I get ready for each of these Thursday. I'm going to ask you to give me comments like Kevin Rich did. Kevin specifically said, hey, I'd like to see how you get an STL into a vCarve Pro. So if you can give me comments on things, then I can do that and get those included. Or maybe it depends on how long the show is going to be, because sometimes it'll just take too long for a live. And instead of doing a live, what I would do is a YouTube video on that and post that. So you still get it, but it may not be in the live. And I'd let you know that in the discussion. So I'm working with a few people for future guest appearances. And the plan would be to go through a couple tips and tricks. Like I said, I only want to take about 15 minutes for the tips and tricks, no more than a half hour. And then I want to give the guest an opportunity to share their cool stuff and let you all ask questions. With that, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And we'll catch you on the next show next Thursday if you show up. And with that, I'm going to end the session. And if you have anything, go ahead and write me. Let's see here. Do both, Rob. Post a video in the morning, then do a live Q&A that same afternoon. That's probably not a bad idea, Mark. That's a model that's worked very successful for you. And with that, we'll go ahead and end the session. If you have any questions or comments, you can put those into the this one I posted as a live. Also, thumbs up and things like that help get the live out in front of other people. And with that, have a good day. And Shane and I will close this out, and then we'll talk afterwards on what we think we did right, what we think we did wrong. Take care.